2 minutes before.
Gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on the freedom land. Ain't gonna let my fears turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let my fears turn me round. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on the freedom land. Ain't gonna let my anger turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let my anger turn me round. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on the freedom land. Ain't gonna let my judgment turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let my judgment turn me round. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on the freedom land. Ain't gonna let my sorrow turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let my sorrow turn me round. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on the freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on the freedom land.
Good morning and welcome to Unity of Walnut Creek. I know you're going to want to stand up for this one. We got a new sing-along, new to us, from Faith Rivera.
Very easy.
This is a repeat after me. I
Repeat
sing it,
after
you repeat it. I sing it, Dawn's going to repeat it with you guys, all right? Coming together. I got love,
I got love,
I got peace,
I got peace,
I got joy.
I got
Coming
joy,
together. I got love.
I got love,
I got peace.
I got peace,
I got joy.
got
Coming
joy.
together. One heart.
One heart,
One mind.
one mind,
One love.
one
Flowing
love.
like a river. I got hope.
Got hope,
I got strength.
I got strength,
I got faith.
got
To
faith.
move every mountain. Oh, I got hope.
I got hope,
I got
I got
strength.
strength,
I got faith.
I got faith.
Move every mountain. One heart.
One heart,
One mind.
one mind,
One love.
one
Move
love.
every mountain. Yeah, I got you.
I got you,
I got me.
I got me,
I got us.
I got us.
Coming together. I got you.
I got you,
I got me.
I got me,
I got
I
us.
got us.
Coming together. One heart.
One heart,
One mind.
one mind,
One love.
one
Coming
love.
together. We're coming together.
We're coming together,
Coming together.
we're coming together,
Oh, we're coming together.
we're coming together,
Coming together.
we're coming together.
One heart.
One heart,
One mind.
one mind,
One love.
one
Coming together. One heart. One heart.
one heart,
One mind.
one mind,
One love.
one
Coming together.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Lisa.
And the boys in the corner, Tyler, Max, and Scott with his own drum set. Yeah! I like it. I like it. Good morning. Unity of Walnut Creek. It's so nice to be with you this morning. I get to look, as I said many millions of times, I get to look at God 10 times over, folded over from your radiant faces. So it is my privilege to be here. My name, hey Mario, what's up? Cool. And as most of you know, my name is Ron Salazar, and I am a licensed Unity teacher here at Walnut Creek. And since we've all introduced ourselves, let's introduce ourselves to our friends online. So please turn and say good morning. Good morning from us here at Unity of Walnut Creek. Thank you for being here. And as you've probably heard 1,000 times from me, you are an important part of our spiritual community. So thank you for being present with us. And just a reminder, please make sure your cell phones are off so we can have a quiet time when it's time to be quiet. Oh, and our minister, Reverend Kristen Powell, is going to be speaking with us this morning. So thank you. So it is time to say our affirmation. So if you can just relax and sit back, we're just going to take a deep breath and say thank you when we're ready. Okay, so just take a deep breath and say thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And let's say our statement of faith. There is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, the all-loving goodness of God. And let's just soak that in and just know it to be true. I would like to welcome our newcomers, if there are any newcomers. Thank you for being here. If you are with us for the first time and are comfortable in doing so, we invite you to raise your hand now so we may bring you a welcome packet. There is a connection card in this packet. Please take it to our bookstore for an additional welcome gift of a wooden necklace handmade by one of our congregants. Okay. And if you'd rather, you may pick up a packet at the welcome table and still visit the bookstore for a gift. So thank you for being with us. And for you vets, as I like to say, we have connection cards available for all of you in the seat pockets in front of you. With this card, you may submit a prayer request, and our prayer chaplains will pray with you throughout the week. You may also put feedback on these cards. We would appreciate that. If you request information, our staff will respond to you during office hours. The ushers will receive your cards with the offerings. So it is time to greet your neighbor. So please stand and say hello with a handshake or a hug. Thank you.
you. Hello. My name is Ted Spady. I'm your platform assistant for today, and I'd like to present you with some announcements. First off, would you like to learn about the use of acupressure techniques to heal yourself? Yes. Cool. Well, be sure to come to Energy Tools class this Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And then join Reverend Christian and Ron Salazar to learn more about the Unity beliefs, principles, and history in the Unity Basics on Thursday, March 8th, 15th, and the 22nd. This class is open to everyone, and that means even the members. And I, for one, joined the first session that you held and found it most beneficial, even being here for who knows how long. But if you are new to Unity and are wishing to become a member, these sessions are required to become a member of this church. And your Board of Trustees invite you to the community gathering on March 11th. We'll discuss intentions for the year and updates to our financial well-being and the facilities. So bring your questions and your ideas about all aspects of our community. And now I'd like to invite Jenny Landfield to the lectern.
Good morning, everybody. How are you today? They look beautiful, Kristen. Yes. I have a little something that I've been guided to do, which is this Friday night. We're calling it Releasing the Old Story. We are blossoming. So if you want to do that with us, Friday night, March 2nd, this Friday night, there's a ceremony and a celebration. So there's going to be lots and lots of crystal bowls, about 30 of them, and a lot of beautiful music and celebration. And then on Saturday, there's a play shop, which is following up on the energy of this ceremony, which is also to release the old story. And in that play shop, we're going to have journaling and painting and movement and theater games. And many of our Unity teachers are jumping in to come and give a little taste of the tapping and other things going on. So you can come to one or both. And that's about it. There's a table outside. You can come and talk to us. We have some flyers. And you can find out more. And if you have an idea of how you might want to get involved or participate or offer something, please talk to me about that as well. So happy Sunday. Thank you.
And so please take a close look at your today's bulletin for any other details about these announcements and others that are also in here. Thank you.
He is our prayer chaplain who's reading the community prayer today that begins our meditation time, followed by some music. So we invite you to, if you wish, to take things off your lap and prepare for meditation with this reading.
Today's reading is adapted from a daily word. Brave is the word. I am strong, open, brave, and triumphant. I may possess great physical strength, mental capacity, or both. However, neither of these is the source of my true power. The presence of God in my heart brings the fortitude to brave the wilderness and discover true belonging. I find my inner strength by connecting with God in the silence. Spirit within encourages me to be loving, authentic, and brave. Spirit, I interact with others in the spirit of inclusivity and with the foundational understanding that we are one. Heartened by Spirit, I do not merely survive, I thrive. through spirit within and the unbreakable connection of humanity, we all live triumphantly. And from Psalm 31:24, be strong and let your heart take courage.
Just as I enter meditation with a strong, tall back and a soft front and open heart, I also walk about the world with this very stance, carrying the healing and the wholeness and the truth of the spirit that I am. And so we behold the Christ in ourselves and in others with Namaste. brave becomes the road. Beautiful, thank you. Don't we all love the rose? It's been a long time since I've heard that one. Can you hear me? Am I on? Yes, okay, good. So we have been on a 5-week journey, a Sovereign Belonging series based on the book by Brene Brown called Braving the Wilderness. Are you feeling braver? Yeah, or are you in the wilderness? Maybe it's both, right? That's the whole idea. So I want to just kind of actually catch up the people who haven't been here throughout the whole series and remind those of us who have been what we've been doing, what we've learned along the way so far. And these are just a few of the highlights. One of the things we learned is that fitting in and belonging are really two different things, especially when we think of really true belonging. So fitting in is sort of, you know, could be maybe pretzeling yourself a little bit or letting go of some important aspect of yourself. It's really that fitting in requires you often to change who you are. But belonging, true belonging, only asks that you be who you are in truth. So true belonging is really a quest of authenticity, a quest of who we really are, finding bravery and strength along the way. It's a willingness sometimes to step out and be alone, to speak up, to be the first one, you know, to be in that arena that may feel a little bit lonely, actually, and we may feel very alone on that journey to true belonging. So that's one of the key things, was the definition or the understanding of what this quest was about and this true belonging, being this really authentic journey. And then we also learn to move closer to people with whom we have differences. So those that we think of as different from us, different perspectives, different ideologies, different in whatever ways you might define that Brene Brown says, people are hard to dislike, or she even uses the word hate, close up. So move in. And when we move in, when we get closer to those with whom we perceive differences, we learn things, right? Wow, we all want the same things. We're reminded once again, needs are universal, you know? A need for love and compassion and joy and autonomy and freedom and celebration and community and connection. We all have those. And so it's suddenly we begin to recognize that, hey, we're all in this together. We're part of a human family after all. And it's okay if we have differences. So there are many aspects to that, you know, understanding the differences, but getting to the base of it, the very underpinning of it, is really our second principle in unity. This idea that we are all divine, that we are born not of original sin, we don't buy that one, but that we actually come into this world born of original blessing, from the one into the world, and carrying that divinity. And that we all have the divine within us. So, sometimes we say the Christ within us, or the divine God within us, that we are that in essence. That's what we come from. And so that's a key part of this whole journey, really, is upholding that principle and practicing that principle. Not always easy, right? Especially when we're faced with people who it's harder for us to see that divinity or experience that divinity in certain moments, for sure, right? Well, Gandhi said, if you don't find God in the first person you meet, stop looking, because you're basically not going to find it anywhere. So in other words, don't just go to the person and it's easy for that first person you go to, and so then you move on, or it's difficult in that first person and you stop, right? But know that first we must be aligned with the Spirit within us. First, as we, like we just did this beautiful prayer time with the crystal bowls and the singing, And I could feel that our whole, the whole place was sort of resonating, right, with that sound and that healing energy. It was like we were all recognizing and realizing that connection on some level, the connection to spirit, the connection to others. And so once we get aligned with that, then the work becomes easier, that Gandhi is saying, to see the face of God everywhere. Or Mother Teresa put it a little bit differently. She said, every day I see Jesus Christ in all of his distressing disguises. So sometimes to think of it that way is helpful, right? Because it brings forth our compassion, and we sort of get ourselves ready as we move out into the world, as we leave our sanctuaries and we go out to do the work that is ours to do. We can remember, oh, right, Christ in all Christ's distressing disguises. And so then the work of seeing the divinity sometimes is to look past those distressing disguises, right? And to see the truth, to meet soul to soul, heart to heart. So that's a big part of this work. Another aspect that we looked at was speaking truth to Hui. Remember Hui? And we all acknowledge that the spread of Hui in our world is pretty rampant, right? There's a lot of it. Sometimes it may feel like we're wading knee deep or more in Hui. And so what is ours to do is to speak the truth, to call it out, to notice when that is getting passed off as truth, and to say, I don't think so. To know that when we feel like something isn't right, that we can find the courage within us to speak that out. And then we recognized that there is this bond between us as a human family that cannot be broken. And when we come together in collective moments of joy and of pain, we are reminded of that truth, that that bond exceeds everything else. It transcends all perceived differences. So today we're moving into the final chapter of Brene's book, which is strong back, soft front, and wild heart. She actually took the strong back and soft front, or was inspired by Joan Halifax, who's a Zen priest, who Brene first heard Joan talk about strong back, soft front. So what does it mean? Strong back. So you think of your spine, it holds the whole body up, right? And the spine, it's important that the spine stay both sturdy and strong, but also flexible, right? Anybody ever been to a chiropractor? Yeah, so you physically know this well, right? When things get out of alignment, when some part of the vertebrae gets out of alignment, everything gets compromised, right? You might actually feel discomfort or pain. You might not even know that organs are being compromised because of the way the spine is moved, joints are being compromised, and so on. So really we can take that metaphor and recognize that the strengthening of our spine, the alignment of our spine, is very much like when we are aligned with spirit. When we do that inner work and we feel that sense of, oh yes, I'm moving through the world, really with spirit. And so we can feel then, we can relax into the strength of that. And also recognize that there's a sense of flexibility there too. So what Joan Halifax says is that how most of us walk around is quite the opposite. We walk around with a shield in front of us to shield a weak spine, right? So we close things off in front, and then we don't have that strength of spine behind us. And so that's a lot of times how we're working with one another and how we're trying to interact. Well, no wonder we're in the mess we're in, huh? So it's really about reversing that. It's having the strength of spirit, the sturdiness of spirit, the alignment with spirit that gives us that sense of both sturdiness and flexibility. And then we move into that open front. One of the things that Jen Hatmaker says, Jen Hatmaker is a pastor and a philanthropist and a writer, and she talks about her wilderness experience as a minister of a conservative Christian church, when she wrote very openly about her beliefs about inclusivity of the LGBTQ. Wow, there's a lot of letters. We keep adding letters. LGBTQ, yeah, that community. And when she wrote about the community and her inclusivity ideas, of course, lots of people in her congregation were not happy. Lots of people in her wider community didn't like that, didn't believe the same way she did. And so she took a lot of grief for that. So that is an example of how we might step out into the wilderness and feel very much alone. And then she's talking about also having that strong back and that soft front in that kind of arena. No wonder sometimes we want to switch it around, right? And have the shield up instead. So the work is sometimes very difficult. And one of the things that Jen Hatmaker says is that human approval is one of our most treasured ideas. And the offering we must lay at its hungry feet is trying to keep others comfortable. That's a hard one, huh? So that desire that we don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, and you know, if it's even a heightened desire, it's to please others, but maybe even just at the very least, we don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, right? We don't want to make any waves. We don't want to be uncomfortable, and if we make other people uncomfortable, we're going to be uncomfortable. You know, so there's this whole jockeying around that. And this work is about moving beyond that and saying, you know what, that's less important. The temporary feelings of discomfort or not having full approval is less important than understanding who I am as a spiritual being walking this earth at this time and standing up and speaking out when I need to stand up and speak out, even though it makes me uncomfortable and maybe everybody around me. So it's about bravery in a big way, and aptly titled, Braving the Wilderness, right? So this is a bit of that brings us from that strong back then into the soft heart. The soft heart, or the soft front, and the open heart is really what we're after, is about vulnerability, isn't it? And the gifts of vulnerability are so many. You know, we can't really have full joy, full love, unless we enter into vulnerability. But most of us don't want to feel uncomfortable, right? So we're in this constant paradox. So one of the things we need to do is embrace the idea of vulnerability and the open-fronted way of living, the soft front, the open heart. So a friend of mine told me that in sign language, and actually as I inquired into this, I learned that, of course, sign language has many different expressions for the same words, just like we do when we speak different words. So one of the one of the expressions for sign language for vulnerability is this. Right? Sort of kind of like weaken the knees, right? So I asked Larry about this, who knows ASL, of course, and he said, oh, I don't know that one, but I know a different one. You ever feel like that? And then a friend of mine said, there's another one. Yeah, that's the vulnerability we're after. Doesn't make it any easier, but we understand it immediately, don't we? And we understand the gifts that are in that. And in that opening, in that portal, that's where we're stepping through. And that's where we're inviting others in. That's where we're meeting in this full connection of what we're talking about, of our divinity, of our understanding, of crossing these divides and these differences, and recognizing once again that we're all part of this human family. We're all children of God. We came out of that beautiful original blessing, and we've just forgotten. And when this collective amnesia runs through the land, it gets really hard to sort through what's true and what's not. But we must, right? And as we awaken then, as we realize and it comes into our conscious awareness, oh, I see the light now, there's no retreating anymore. I mean, you can, but you're going to be really uncomfortable. So we're going to move out of that, right? So that can be uncomfortable too, to be kind of in the two worlds, right? Now I know what I know, but I'm not sure I'm ready to step out, you know? So then we get in that dance. And what I'm urging us to do, and what Brene Brown is urging us to do, is do it anyway. Step out, because there are great rewards as we move forward, and a great upliftment of our entire consciousness as a humanity. So that's the kind of work we've signed up for in this series, in this life, being here now, right? So that discomfort, Brene Brown talks about in vulnerability. When she talks about that vulnerability is this birthplace of love, of joy, of trust, of intimacy and courage, and that everything that brings meaning to our life. And this is the encouragement of then moving into the vulnerability. If you haven't seen Brene's TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, it's a 20-minute talk. I urge you to watch it because it really breaks this down, this essence and this urgency and this importance of what vulnerability is all about. And so she says that there's two basic reasons why we put the shield up, why we armor ourselves. And one of them is that we're not really comfortable with feelings, and we consider vulnerability a weakness, because if we show those feelings, then we're therefore weak. Anybody ever get that message? Relate to that at all? Yeah. So that was definitely the at least unspoken message that I culled from my childhood. And I remember once my dad, actually I only saw my dad cry once up until this time I was a teenager, and that was at his father's funeral. And then this time my aunt, she was his like favorite sister and really close, best bud in many ways. And she was diagnosed with melanoma and given 6 months to live. She ended up being the longest survivor of melanoma at that time in the United States. She survived then 15 years. Yeah, so I think we were all hopeful that, this was just going away. And then it took a turn, and there came a time when she was making her transition. And my dad became somebody different than I had been used to, because he had always been a half full kind of guy. He's always positive. He was always looking on the brighter side of things. We'd all want to go to the beach, and it was clouding over, and the skies were dark, and my dad'd say, "Oh, they'll clear. Come on, everybody, we're going to the beach." It's just he always had that kind of outlook. And during that time, he would just sit quietly. I remember a couple of nights just watching him just sort of stare into the fire and just in his own world. And one night, he and I were the only ones up, and he started to cry. Gets me every time because it was such an honor to be there with him in that space. But as he was choking through his tears, he was saying how he was such a coward and he was embarrassed. And I said, "Dad, it's way more brave for you to be showing your feelings and crying right now than it would ever be for you to try to block it out." I knew that innately as a teenager, even though it wasn't what I was being taught in my household. And it was such a beautiful time of sharing. And you know what those moments are like, right? When you see somebody break into their vulnerability, how connected we feel to each other, right? When we've got the shield up, not so much a connection there. So if what we want in our lives is true belonging and connection, then we must be willing to be vulnerable, right? The other reason that Brene says that we armor ourselves up is because we've experienced violence and oppression firsthand. And so to us, our vulnerability became a liability. That's a hard one to overcome, because if you grew up feeling like it wasn't safe when a child should feel safe, it's hard to undo that programming, but it can be done. And she says that the key there is to create courageous spaces where you can be fully seen. So if you can then, maybe it's at incremental steps, you create the spaces where it takes some courage, but there is a relative feeling of safety in the room. And that's where you take your step. That's where you take your chance. And then you widen your circle, and you widen your circle, and pretty soon it's secondhand to step through that portal through your vulnerability and into the wilderness. So that's the way that we approach it in that case. And if the prior situation is true of not feeling our feelings or thinking vulnerability is weak, she says in that case, then we need to just let go of the control of the outcome and allow ourselves to be seen anyway. So if we use those as sort of our guides, if either of those kind of armoring ways speak to you, use one of those as your guides to ask yourself that question. Can I create a courageous space and be fully seen? Or can I allow myself to be fully seen and let go of the outcome, not have to control the outcome in the situation? So that's some of the ways that we create the soft front. And then there's the wild heart. What is the wild heart? It's a heart that can hold the paradoxes of life, right? Be both brave and afraid. Be both tender and tough. Be both scared and excited. I like to call that scary excited, you know? Because it is a really alive feeling when we're in that kind of scary, excited place. And don't we want to feel really alive? And if we're just shielding, if we're protecting, if we're hiding, then that real aliveness is never there for us. If we're trying to fit in and pretzel ourselves into a way of being that feels like it's acceptable in the group, if we're seeking that human approval all the time, or being really concerned about everybody's comfort level, including our own, then we won't get to experience the aliveness, the fullness of our joy and our pain, what we've come here to be as divine human beings. We'll shortchange our lives. We'll shortchange our connections. We'll shortchange the passion that is available to us if we instead follow the path that has been set before us by the brave souls who have walked through the wilderness and what they have found on the other side. I mean, Jen Hatmaker talks about that process of talking about inclusivity and then getting a lot of backlash from her community and moving through that wilderness of feeling alone and feeling scared and feeling like there was a lot to lose. And she said, what I found out there in the wilderness was not loneliness, was not aloneness, but a whole bunch of other people who were willing to break silence, who were willing to tell the truth, who were willing to speak. And they were alive, and they were free, and they were authentic. And that's how we find our tribe, our true tribe, is when we take the quest for true belonging that sometimes is an individual quest, but it eventually brings us to the fullness of where we belong. And so if there is a desire for belonging, know that somewhere along the way there may be patches that feel actually more alone than together, but they're just temporary, because it's just a temporary part of the walk to the truth, back to the oneness and understanding of who we really are and who we've come to be. So the wild heart is a heart that is grateful. A wild heart understands gratitude. You know how it is when you start to speak the things you're grateful for, and it just, there's a crescendo, right? There's just so many things. Suddenly you're grateful for like the speck of color in the carpet. There's just so much, right? But with a wild heart, when we enter into the world and we move about the world with a grateful heart, with a heart full of gratitude, then Brene Brown says that we understand the magnitude of what somebody has lost. When we get what we have and we're grateful for that, then we understand the magnitude when somebody has lost something. That's that staying open, right? So it's not just, oh, I'm grateful for what I have and then retreat, but I'm grateful for what I have, and I'm in that open-hearted space. Then when you come and tell me what you've lost, there's a real sense of depth of empathy there, isn't there? So a wild heart has that, because a wild heart knows how to be grateful. A wild heart does not diminish your own pain. So pain is pain, right? Hurt is hurt. It may be relative, but when we begin to compare with others and say, somehow my whatever wounds are not as big as your wounds, or my causes or my reasons are not as great, we actually diminish our ability to be empathetic. So it's important, she talks about, to honor our own pain, our own wounds, to take care of ourselves so that we can also be available to others. It makes sense, doesn't it, when you begin to think about it, when you begin to break it down in this way. So not diminishing our own pain, and also not draining our own joy, So when we are in service to others, there's always that, for me, I'd say it's like finding the sweet spot, Finding that sweet spot between when I'm conscious of my own joy and when I'm conscious of helping another in their pain. And there's a place where we begin to feel drained and recognize we're sacrificing our own joy, then that's the time to go do what it is that we need to do to refill, right? Not to keep pushing forward, because then we erode our gifts. We erode the sense of presence that we can bring, and there isn't a fullness or a genuineness there anymore. It's just a should or a have to or because I committed or whatever it is. And so it's that balancing act, that understanding, that finding that sweet spot of when am I diminishing my joy and when am I helping others in joy? You know, so there's always that dance to be doing. And how do we know? Well, the wisdom of our bodies will tell us. And if we get more and more clear in the wisdom of our bodies, which is another way of saying the intuition of spirit coming forth for us in a physical way, when we get more and more in tune to that, there are subtleties that we will tune into. We won't wait until we have major pain or major things come along, because we'll notice the subtleties of what it is that we need in a certain time. And then our best selves can be brought forth. So this work isn't all about, all about 100% always doing for others, because we have to be included in that equation. And so the wild heart understands that. So these are some of the key parts of what the strong back, soft front, wild heart are. And I want to just look back, because we've been on a long journey and there's been lots packed in it. So I just want to take a look at what I've pulled forth as 7 keys to creating this brave new world, this brave new self, in short, a brave new order. The first one is to rehumanize where we have dehumanized. And so collectively remember that dehumanization process is where we have created a circle, which originally was all humanity, that's our natural circle, and all of life, animals, plants, everybody included. And then we have in the process cast out or dehumanized through a process of images and words to create a moral exclusion. So we've taken a group and put them outside of the circle. And then we've all agreed that we're all in this code together except whoever that is, right? The exception group. And then we feel sort of incensed when the exception group wants equal rights, because we somehow think that's whoa, I'm really having a hard time here. I think I'm just going too fast. Asking for special treatment. That's one of the ways we see through privileged eyes. Oh, this group is asking now for special treatment. So how do we then rehumanize those who we have collectively dehumanized? Well, we rehumanize by going back to the images and the words that were hurtful and hateful and exclusionary, and we begin to make them inclusionary and kind and welcoming back into the human family. So that process is a collective process, but on an individual basis, we can look at the places where we might be able to do that. It's also a process of I knew I was going to have trouble with this one because I think I made the word up. Divinizing. So seeing the divinity in others. And that brings up that level of human dignity, and it also brings in the truth, this practice that we have in unity, this practice of seeing the divine, of beholding the divine, of reaching for the divine, of looking past the distressing disguises to the divine, of seeing the face in everyone we meet each time. The second point, the second key, and there are 7 because in Hebrew numerology, 7 means physical completion. And so we're actually kind of completing something as we end this journey. And it is physicalized. It's spiritual. It's spirituality physicalized, right? It's practical spirituality. That's what we're about in unity. The second one is to practice generosity. Remember that generosity is really making a kind assumption about people's intentions and actions and words. So giving people a little latitude, right? It's offering people a little space, the benefit of the doubt. That's a way that we might practice generosity. The third one is to lean in and listen. This was that idea of dialoguing with people with different perspectives or different backgrounds, inviting people into conversation. And then those key words that we can ask to reach out a little further is, tell me more. Really a great 3 words for any conversation. If we want connection, if we want real connection, tell me more. And then we begin to unpack and get to a deeper level of understanding. And we were encouraged in this chapter of, when we came to this, lean in and listen, is to not turn away when we have that urge to end the conversation, you know, but wait and ask yourself, should I ask, tell me more? Is that where I want to go here? And try that out before we sort of shake off the dust from our sandals and move on, you know? So stay with it a little bit. The 4th one is to break silence, to be courageous enough to be a silence breaker or a whistleblower when you need to speak the truth. We talked about, in that week, we talked about the silence breakers on Time Magazine's Person of the Year for 2017 were the women who started the Me Too campaign, who were brave enough to begin to speak out. And then, of course, we saw, 50,000 people overnight signed on to the Me Too campaign. And then it grew and grew and grew into a movement. And so it's those times where we need to speak up and speak out, and we have the courage to do so, that we may be braving the wilderness in a way that really needs to happen for everybody's good. The next one is speaking your heart, which is similar. And in Matthew, there's a beautiful scripture that says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so it is for us when we are speaking our hearts. The 5th one is to stand up for all, including those who are less privileged. So to really keep thinking about everyone and to be willing and to remember that definition of to be privileged means that you can opt out of injustice. You can opt out when things aren't, really fair in the world. And the encouragement here is don't. Don't opt out. Don't hide behind privilege. Be strong enough to move in and to stand up for others who may not have that same impact for their voice. And then finally, the 7th one is to hold hands with strangers. And holding hands with strangers, remember, is about showing up for those moments of collective joy and collective pain that remind us of that unbreakable bond of humanity. So I just invite you to close your eyes for a moment and just to have a short prayer as we conclude this series. Spirit, we give thanks for this journey, for the bravery, for the encouragement, for the reminders of who we are in truth, for the divinity and the humanity that binds us all together as a family. And as we walk out of this sanctuary, we carry these principles with us. We carry these principles that are backed by a strong back, aligned with spirit, and an open front, an open heart, a soft front that can be permeated by both the world's pain and the world's joy, and that we can continue to stay open and show up. Thank you, God, for giving us strength every day to do the work that needs to be done by us, and giving us the joy of both service and all the play, the fun, whatever it is that makes us feel alive. Together we move through this world with a strong back and an open heart and a brave soul. And so I invite you to affirm with me, my back is strong, my back is strong, my heart is open, my heart is open, my soul is brave, my soul is brave. And so it is.
Just remember, in the winter, far
Thank you, Christian, for reminding me what a beautiful spiritual tribe I belong to. Thank you. I made a mistake while I was up here last time. I forgot to recognize Ronnie Ong, so thank you for sharing our music. And for Jeannie Landfield for giving us that beautiful meditation. Thank you. And Megan. Thank you, Megan. We have prayer chaplains here at Unity of Walnut Creek. And our prayer chaplains are available after the service to provide personal prayer support. If you are a prayer chaplain serving today, please stand. And please stand. Our prayer chaplains wear the lavender stoles. Thank you. Whether you have a joy or a concern on your heart today, praying with our prayer chaplains is a powerful opportunity to have your intentions raised up in consciousness. And now it's time for our prosperity celebration. All right, yeah! Cool. This is fun. I love it up here. Okay. Let us now open our hearts to the consciousness of giving as we align with that universal law of circulation. As we give, so shall we receive. Repeat that with me, please. As we give, so shall we receive. In truth, there is no lack or limitation. Abundance is our true nature. So I invite you to take your tithings in your hands and repeat the affirmation together. Divine love, one with me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am joy-filled and grateful.
Or you can start speaking up.
Brave new world, isn't it? Let's bless these gifts, giving thanks for our abundance in every way, and together with this affirmation. We give thanks for the ever-increasing, unceasing flow of absolute good in our lives now. So it is. I think Bob wants to tell us something about what happened today.
Well, we talked about having a strong spine.
Yes.
And Stephanie actually came up with a nice little exercise for us to practice in Sunday school where we turned facing the back of the person in front of us and felt their spine. And then we turned and did this, and we talked about that for a little bit, about having a strong spine. We actually talked about having each other's back. And lots of us remembered that saying from before, so we talked a little bit about how we want to protect someone else's back and that our back needs to be strong. And we talked about having a soft heart and being vulnerable. We covered a lot today.
We did too. So we line up in part in hopes that you'll have these great dinner time conversations with your families, because you've all been talking about the same stuff. At family meetings, absolutely. All right, let's bless this wonderful tribe together. Children, youth, and teachers, we love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the divine light within you. And if you'd like to take your neighbor's hand, you may. If you wish not to, that's fine, but we're going to close out with a prayer of protection and the peace song. Together, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God ever present, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. Take each moment and with each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. You are the light and the love and the peace on earth. So let your light shine and have fun. Nice job serving.